Hello everyone, this is Steph, and today I'm going to share with you how I made this Garden Wishes rectangle card. Now, my previous video I demonstrated the ice cream corner suite using an oval frame, and so I'm going to do the same thing except this time I'm using the Garden Wishes stamp set, which is new in our mini catalog, along with some rectangle frames that I came across going through my inventory. It's a super easy card to make, and I will also show you how you can kind of recreate it if you don't have frames on hand. So this is the card, and I will say making the rectangle frames using this particular designer series paper pack, let me get that in front of me, the Dandy Garden. There's some really pretty, you can see all my little bits that I cut, but there's some really pretty patterns in here, and then there are some that are a bit much for me. I don't know if I would have used them otherwise. So like for example, this one in particular I'm not totally fond of, but the reverse side is pretty. So using a card like this where the designer series paper is your base and then you kind of have layers above it, I think for me helps me visualize using that paper much better than trying to figure out how do I use it in its entirety. So this particular one is a little more subtle. It's the mossy meadow background with the dandelions kind of throughout the pattern, and then having the frame go on top with the stamped image kind of popping out of it, I think really works well. Now, there's many colors in this paper pack, so you don't have to go with such a dark shade if you want. This features, let's see, Blackberry Bliss, Bumblebee, Calypso Coral, Misty Moonlight, Mossy Meadow. The designs are outlined in basic black, and then Whisper White would be your base neutral. So let's get started. So just like the oval card, I came across these already with the die cut in it, and then you can use this later on. I don't know if you can see, it has a little hole punched out of there. All right. So what you're going to do is, this measures, let's see, sorry, 3 3/4 by 5, and or about 5 1/8. It's not exactly 5, so I went with a 4 by 5 1/4 designer series paper. Now the reverse side to this paper is quite pretty. It's just little the wisps of the dandelions. I don't know what that's called, but you know, growing up you'd have those white fluffy things and you'd blow on them and they'd fly everywhere. So that's what that reminded me of. So I might do the reverse and just see how it comes out, you know, because that's how this one was made, using the darker shade. I don't know. Let's see once I get stamped. And then from cutting out, because the designer series paper is 6 by 6, you end up with a 2-inch strip. So I just cut that down to 1 5 1/4, and that will go on my inside layer, which is 4 5 1/4. And then again, for the card base, I'm doing Mossy Meadow. You could do Whisper White if the colors, like I said, are too dark for you. You could use the yellow, you know, if you want to highlight that. That's the Bumblebee in color. So I'm going to start with just getting my inside layer done. And I think I'm going to try the reverse side just for the sake of comparison. And I'm just going to stick this here like that. And add my stamp and seal, which I'm getting low. So at some point I'm probably going to have to swap this out. And then I'm going to set my card base aside. The next thing that you want to do is have your stamps ready to go. And these are the 3 that I used for this particular video, or excuse me, for this particular card. So I did the dandelion bunch the greeting that says your act of kindness are like a breath of fresh air, and the little kind of stitched one for the little bee. Now there are other greetings within this stamp set that you could totally use, like made with love for a true friend, from all of us, just a simple hello and wishing you all the best. But I'm just going to stick with the same one. And then what you're going to do is, I used Memento because I'm going to be coloring with some Stampin' Blends. And you'll need a scrap piece of Whisper White. And because this is a larger stamp, I prefer to set it down and add the ink to the top like this. That way I know I'm getting good coverage. Stamp straight down, and I'm going to give it a little push. All right. Now, when you color this, I used 3 colors. You could color it any color you want. But the 3 that I chose was Light and Dark Mossy Meadow, and actually the Dark Mango Melody. I only have the Stampin' Right in the Bumblebee, which you could certainly use, so it doesn't really make a difference. I just thought the Mango Melody kind of matched the background, so whatever you prefer. You could use watercolor pencils, markers, whatever you have on hand. So what I did was I started with the marker tip on the dark one, and I just kind of came down these little wispy things here. And you'll see once I switch to the brush tip how the colors change. So for this one, it gives a nice dark background and a little bit of a contrast to the rest of it. I felt like just doing the straight markers, or I should say the straight brush tip, the colors looked too similar to me. And where I really wasn't concerned with the shading, I just thought this was nice to kind of break it up, because we are going with a very tone-on-tone monochromatic look. And when I color, I don't stress over getting inside the lines, making sure all the areas are done just right. I do want my card to look nice and neat, but I think the joy of handmade stuff is sometimes the little imperfections. It makes it unique, one of a kind. I want to have fun. I don't want to worry about, you know, everything not being so, you know, one way. All right. So before I do the leaves, because another option that you could do is just leave this stamped black and white and then use it. So I'm just going to start. I just kind of went around. Now there is a stamp in the stamp set that allows you to stamp inside this particular one, and you can see I used it on this card. So it doesn't completely cover it all, and it gives a little bit of shading. Color is outside the edge, if that shows up. For this one, I'm just going in with the marker or the blends, so it's just a deeper look. And my concept is to just add color to this area, but again, not worry too much about getting every little speck. So now I'm going to go in with the light Mossy Meadow to color in these leaves. And I just do it lightly. These markers, you don't have to put a lot of pressure. I feel the more pressure you use, the more that they bleed, and the quicker you'll ruin your tip. These are not like, you know, your Crayola markers. So lightly, just like you would a paintbrush. All right, and so now we have that all colored, and you can kind of see that I've left some areas white. You can see where I went in with the darker part of the Mossy Meadow. And now we're going to cut this out using the dies. that coordinates with this set. And those are called the Dandy Wishes. Now, because I'm just doing one thing here, I'm not going to pull out the whole Stamp and Emboss machine, but I am going to grab the mini one. And I think I'll go this way. And if you haven't used this machine yet, you have some plates that come with it. And to cut out dies, you basically need the number 2 acrylic plates like this, and this number 1 cutting pattern. If you were embossing a 3D embossing folder, which would be a narrow one, you would use the number 4, and regular embossing folders are number 3. But this is nice and compact, you know, when doing a video or traveling where you're not taking a bunch of stuff with you. You just have to keep in mind that the cutting plates are smaller. So this worked perfect, having this particular size that needed to be cut out. All right, so the first thing that you're going to do is add your cutting plate down, an acrylic number 2. I'm going to add my paper and the die. And then what I like to do is, until I get a magnetic one, I like to add either a piece of washi tape, if I have some left over that I know I'm not going to use, or just a Post-it note. And that, I don't think it's going to cut perfect, but I don't want to spend a lot of time fussing. And so let's stick this on. And that just kind of helps hold the die in place as it goes through the machine. Sometimes they do shift just a little bit when pressure is added, but I'm not too concerned. So now, actually I do. I need to turn it because of the way I'm sitting. All right. So now I'm going to just start cranking this through. You're going to hear some snapping, which is perfectly normal. And that's all I'm going to cut today. And then you can see your little images cut out. Just set this aside. All right, so now let's bring back our layers. This is my base. All right, so I decided I'm going to go with the lighter dandelion background. So I'm just going to add my adhesive. And the trick with the Stamp and Sale too is I find not a lot of pressure works well. I tend to bear down, and I think that's where I struggle using it. I have a heavy hand. So lighter pressure allows it to come out easier. Okay, so now I'm going to stamp my greeting on the bottom here. And I apologize if there's any background noise. You know, the moment I tell everybody and prepare them, then I'm going to be recording something is when they seem to get louder. And I don't have a separate studio somewhere. The joys of a family. It's fine, but again, if you hear anything in the background. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some dimensionals to the back of the frame. Here, here, and here. I like to stay away from the usually when I put a dimensional on a layer like this, I would have come closer to the edges, but because I want this part to be popped up a little bit more, I decided that staying kind of in the center works well. All right, and so then you have that. Now I'm going to add some dimensionals to the back of my dandelion, here and there. And when I put it on the card, I'm tucking under. Now you can lean it more this way, this way. So I kind of tucked under, but I wanted these stems to stay popped up. All right, and then in the DSP pack, you have a sheet that's all little bumblebees here. And so I'm just going to cut this out. I've already started to fussy cut. Just, so I'm going to do that. So now you have a little bee. I'm going to put a little dimensional, the mini ones, on the back. And I stuck the bee kind of up towards the top. I will take the little, I don't know, like stitchy swirl to show like the bee has some movement, and just stick it down just like that. And that's the card. So here's using the darker background, and here's the lighter background. I don't know, which one do you like better? I'm leaning towards this one. Green is one of my favorite colors, and I love every shade of green. It's something I navigate towards rather often, so this one kind of stands out to me a little bit more. But those are the two cards. All right, so now I told you that I would show you how to do the frame if you don't have these pre-cut die sheets. Super easy. So for this one, I'm actually going to use this pattern, again using a Mossy Meadow base, and I've already stuck that down. I have my strip for the inside of my card, and I'm going to just quickly put this on. Now usually what I do with designer paper too is I add it to the envelope flap, but I would have to cut another full sheet of paper. I didn't have smaller scraps. So I might stamp on my envelope later. I think it's pretty to send out an envelope that has some design to it. And I just realized I put that strip upside down. All right, so I'm just going to reverse it. I'm going to make this go to the right side instead of the left. But either way, it just adds a little touch to the inside. So you can handwrite a greeting or stamp a greeting, and it's just, I don't know, just finishes it off. All right, so here is my frame, and you can see it has the stitched edge there. So what I did is I chose from the rectangle stitched rectangle framelits. We have the layers here. And this one, which the way my pack is lined up, would be here. So third from the smallest in the rectangles. These are the skinnier ones, and then we have a smaller one here. So this one right here. And the size for that, I measured the frame to be about 3 3/8 by 2. When you cut out the rectangle, this is about 3 1/8 by 1 7/8. And so you can see it cuts the stitching on the rectangle piece here itself, as well as this. So I don't know if this would be considered the negative and this is the positive or whatever, but I'm using this one. So just to show you a little comparison. So here is the one that was from the piece that had the die already cut out of it. So rather than a rounded edge, we have a stitched edge. And I think either way, you know, they're pretty. It will look nice. So let's quickly put this together. So again, I'm going to use, so actually how I would do this is find your center on a piece of cardstock that measures 3 3/4 by 5 or 5 1/8. And then I would put, again, the Post-it note to hold it in place, and I would put that through my Stampin' Cut emboss machine. Now, because of the width of the paper, this won't fit through the mini, so I would suggest using your full-size die cutter. And then you'll get these two pieces. Now, I am working on trying to come up with a couple projects using the die, like the frame pieces, or I should say the tag pieces that come out once you either pull this out or cut this through your die machine. And so I'll be hoping to post a video with that in the coming week using those elements. And that's been my goal lately is to try to use up what I have on hand. I still, want the latest and greatest when everything comes out. And being a demonstrator, we like to show you new products. But I think it's also important to use what you have on hand and show the versatility of mixing those elements together. I can't always run out and get everything that's in the catalog, but it's important, like this. This is something that is simple. I can show you how to make it on your own. You don't need to have this particular paper pattern or stamp set. Anything goes. This would have been cute using the ice cream cones as well. Okay, so we already have our DSP, which is 4 by 5 1/4. The frame piece, which is 3 3/4 by 5. I've stamped my greeting. So now I'm going to add my dimensionals to the back. Again, kind of in the center of each corner. And then I've already done the flower or the dandelion and add a couple there. So now I'm going to pull these off, center this just like that. This one I'm going to slide in, and I'm just going to bend this one just a little bit more to the left. I already have the bee cut out, so add a dimensional to that one, and he's a little more on that side. And I'm just going to stamp my my little dots here for the bees movement. All right, so here you have it. So this is the one that I used using the stitched rectangle framelits, and these are the two using the little die cuts or rectangle die cut cards. I don't even know what they were called. There was no label on them, but so that's what I'm calling them. And there you have it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Till next time, happy stamping.